United Nations General Assembly meeting for a critical emergency session as they call for an end to the fighting immediately. We have team coverage on the crisis.
We're going to begin with Eyewitness News reporter Derek Waller. He is live outside the United Nations with more on that meeting. Derek?
And Sandra, David, as you mentioned, the UN General Assembly is meeting right now for that emergency meeting. They're going to be taking up a non-binding resolution that's supposed to carry with it political weight. Now, outside the building here on First Avenue, you see this small but growing group of protesters. You see they're wrapped in the Ukrainian flag. They are also making their voices heard. Support for Ukraine outside the UN this morning, this small group of protesters, and a mobile billboard calling for Putin to end this war.
We need more sanctions. We need just to tell Russia that this is not right.
Inside a rare emergency meeting of the UN General Assembly at the request of Ukraine, trying to put political pressure on the world to denounce Russia. Ukraine's ambassador even comparing Putin to Adolf Hitler.
This war was not provoked. It was chosen by someone who is right now sitting in the bunker. We know what happened with the person who sat in the bunker in Berlin in May 1945.
It is imperative that we act on behalf of the women, children, and men caught in the crossfire. It is imperative that we pursue all available channels to contain the situation, to de-escalate tension, and to seek peaceful resolution.
These people do not have any morality. They're killing civilians. This is not just about military.
Alexander Taran's grandmother, sisters, and brothers are still in Ukraine, determined to stay and fight.
Putin has united Ukrainian people more than any other Ukrainian politician did. Ukrainians will stand and fight back. Russia will not be able to afford this war for any more longer.
And back here live outside the UN, you see and hear those protesters behind me. Now, Russia's ambassador also spoke at length this morning. Many of what he had to say, frankly, just was not true. One thing he said, he called for the, quote, denazification of Ukraine. That is particularly offensive because Ukraine's democratically elected president is Jewish.
New explosions tonight near Kyiv as a massive convoy of Russian military vehicles, 40 miles long, heads towards the Ukrainian capital.
The situation getting more dire by the hour. The Russians now targeting civilian areas.
And Ukraine's president calling the attacks and killings a war crime.
We have several reports tonight. Eyewitness News reporter Jim Dolan begins our coverage.
For those who must leave, and for those who must stay in Vladimir Putin's vengeful chokehold, war in Ukraine has changed everything. When will they stop the shelling, this woman asks. But Vladimir Putin wasn't saying. In a snarling, menacing speech today, Russia's president somehow blamed the West for his bungled invasion of Ukraine. Over the weekend, he appeared to threaten nuclear war as his undisciplined, unmotivated military continued to get bogged down in Ukraine. Ukraine's president claimed Russia was targeting civilian areas and said Putin was guilty of war crimes. He signed a document requesting admission to the European Union, a move sure to infuriate Putin. But the attacks on civilians are what have galvanized the world. Apartment buildings and homes destroyed. Smoke poured from a grocery store struck by a Russian missile. At least 16 children have already died in the war. More than 350 Ukrainians dead in just 5 days. In Belarus, delegations from Russia and Ukraine held peace talks for almost 6 hours, but came to no agreement. Long convoys of Russian forces are closing in on Kyiv now, but the people of Ukraine are mounting a bold resistance. In one village near Kharkiv, they stared down a column of Russian tanks with hardly a weapon among them. The tanks are backing up, he says. The people didn't let them in.
It's clear the Russians have not made the progress that they wanted to make by day 5.
Ukraine's president, a hero of democracy no matter how the war in his country ends, gave another speech from Ukraine's capital today. He said the war in his country has shown who the Ukrainian people are. And it has shown, he said, what Russia has become.
And now to the heart-wrenching refugee crisis over there, and it's growing with Ukrainians desperate to get out of their country. Trains jammed, roads clogged, and just across the border, lines can last for hours. More than 500,000 Ukrainians have already left, and that number fell to 4 million in the coming days. With that part of our coverage, here's Eyewitness News reporter Lucy Yang.
Families torn apart. Women and children fending for themselves as they brave the long and tortured journey to refugee camps. This is what the human toll looks like. The UN estimates more than 500,000 Ukrainians have fled their beloved homeland in search of safer countries. Poland, Hungary, Slovakia, Romania, even Moldova are absorbing the frightened and vulnerable families, some huddled under blankets. And this is just the trickle. Experts estimate 4 million will eventually flee Ukraine.
Everyone ran to buy some food, and we hear some boom everywhere. And after that, we directly pack our bag and clothes and some documents, and we ran.
As humanitarian groups fight the logistical battle to provide food, shelter, and medical assistance, nearby nations are struggling to keep up with the flood of families pushing into their borders. This mother did not escape in time. Her innocent child was killed in one of the bombings. Even the medical team wept when they could not save her. Trains leaving Ukraine are log-jammed. Roads out of the country are at a standstill. Many took to walking after throwing together bare necessities. Who knows when they will be able to return, what their once-free country will look like, or if the brave sons of Ukraine will prove victorious. Which leaves these traumatized refugees clinging to prayer. Hope in short supply.
Папа будет продавать что-то, будет помогать нашим героям, нашим войскам, будет помогать.
This is the face of war.
Tonight, coming together in prayer to show support and calling for an end to the Russian invasion of Ukraine. Dozens of people, including Governor Murphy, were in Somerset, New Jersey tonight in a show of solidarity. It was just one of the many gatherings voicing their support for Ukraine, whose courage in the face of war continues to inspire. Here's Eyewitness News reporter Josh Einiger.
It was opening night at Lincoln Center. In a packed house, the Met Opera kicked off its spring season with a performance of Don Carlos, which recounts the Spanish Inquisition.
Here we are, 5 centuries later, and we seem to be just as uncivilized.
Peter Gelb runs the Met, and today announced he's severing ties with all Russian performers or institutions which support Vladimir Putin, including the famed Bolshoi, set to perform here next year.
I think that's the right thing to do. I honestly don't understand why Putin has done what he's done, and wherever we can make a statement, we should, against his actions.
It is, of course, just the latest in a cascade of cancellations being endured by Russian society as the international outrage over this war boils over. Famously neutral Switzerland added itself to the list of countries freezing Russian assets, with international sanctions causing the ruble to plummet and a run on banks in Moscow. Soccer's governing bodies banned Russia from the World Cup. Shell Oil is ending its operations in the country after its rival BP divested its stake from a massive Russian oil company. Russian flights are banned from the air over Europe and Canada, leading a JFK-bound Aeroflot jet to turn around in mid-flight and head back to Moscow. If they'd made it to New York, passengers would have seen the skyline lit up in the colors of Ukraine's flag. Or they might have heard this. Before the opera began at Lincoln Center tonight, the crowd leapt to its feet as performers sang the Ukrainian national anthem. As leaders in the arts join in a global boycott, it may not change the outcome in Ukraine one bit. But here, now, there's just no other choice.
Only only be described as disgusting. That attack happened at a subway station. The man threw feces on a woman who was waiting for a train and then took off. That horrified victim today talked to Eyewitness News reporter Stefan Kim.
It is an attack on the subway, so vile, so disgusting. There are a few words to describe the indecency. In this video released by the NYPD, you can see a man take something out of a bag, human feces, which he then throws and rubs on a woman's face. No apparent motive. That woman says she was attacked out of nowhere. Speaking in Spanish, the victim, who did not want to be identified, says her assailant spread it all over her face and into her hair. She says she was sitting on a bench on her phone when she was struck. It happened so quickly. She didn't realize what had happened until after he... Police say it happened last Monday, February 21st, around 5:15 p.m. on the southbound platform of the East 241st Street subway station in the Bronx. The victim says 2 days after she was attacked here, she was harassed and followed by another man on the train in Brooklyn. In that incident, she said other riders were on board to help keep her safe. The mayor today saying incidents like this reinforce the need for a focus on how to address mental illness. And a week after his subway safety plan went into effect, he's ready to make some tweaks.
I'm sitting down tomorrow to do an evaluation. I went out yesterday some of the subway stations and talked to the officers on the ground to ask them their pros and cons. What could we be doing differently?
As for the victim in the Bronx, she's hoping the mayor's plan to curb crime on the subway will work.
Hi everyone, I'm meteorologist Lee Goldberg. This is Wake Up Weather on ABC 7 NY. Flipping the calendar to March 1st, first day of meteorological spring, and March comes in like a lamb. Hopefully don't pay a price for that as we go forward, but it actually looks like the first week of March is going to be fairly quiet. There's some storminess we'll talk about in the upcoming weekend, but February will go in the books as an above normal month. We'll get the official numbers from the Weather Service going forward. The highest number 68 and the 17th, and the lowest